This is what many think the European Union is, but this isn't entirely accurate. The European Union has only 27 member states, and even though some European countries have rich histories with some EU countries, they decided to remain outside of the Union. But why are these three countries so closely linked to the European identity, and still not a part of the European Union? Iceland is by far the most isolated of the European nations, and the closest EU neighbor is Ireland, over 1,400 kilometers away. Norway sits right at the top of the Scandinavian peninsula, with direct access to the North Sea, the Arctic Circle, and the mouth of the Baltic Sea. Switzerland is the country that many think is a part of the EU, as it sits right at the heart of the continent, and is surrounded by central EU states. France, Germany, Italy, and Austria all share a border with Switzerland. Let's take a look at their relationship with the Union and why they've decided not to join the other countries. Iceland applied to join the EU in 2009, in the aftermath of the financial crisis, with many believing that membership might offer greater economic stability. However, with a change in government in 2013, the country's direction toward EU shifted and the application process stalled.
Well, now Iceland has announced it's dropping its bid to join the European Union 6 years after first applying.
The main reason for Iceland's hesitation is its fishing industry. Iceland's fisheries are a vital part of its economy and culture, and some worry EU membership could lead to restrictions on fishing quotas or access to fishing grounds under the EU's common fisheries policy. Beyond fisheries, concerns about maintaining national sovereignty, potential impacts on the small but protected agriculture sector, and the advantages of having control over their own currency have also played a major role. Although Icelanders have never voted in a referendum specifically on EU membership, public sentiment has shifted over time, influenced by both domestic and international events, like Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has made some Icelanders see the EU as a valuable security partner. Norway has twice made attempts to join the European Union. Initially in 1962, the country applied to what was then called the European Economic Community. However, when France under President Charles de Gaulle vetoed the UK's application to join the European Economic Community in 1963 and 1967, Norway's bid was indirectly affected. With the UK, a key partner and fellow Nordic nation, unable to join, Norway decided to suspend its application both times. Eventually, negotiations successfully concluded in 1972, leading to a referendum where the Norwegian people voted against joining. A subsequent referendum, held in 1994, was a close call, as 52% of voters rejected EU membership, while 48% voted in favor. Since then, Norway has not actively pursued full membership. Several factors contribute to Norway's hesitation to join the EU. Their big problem is fish. Norway places a significant emphasis on maintaining control over its fisheries sector, which, like Iceland, is a vital part of its economy. Apart from fisheries, Norway's vast natural resources, especially oil and gas, play a pivotal role in its economy. Some Norwegians are concerned that EU membership might impact the country's autonomy over these resources. Then, there's national sovereignty. Many emphasize the importance of preserving Norway's unique cultural identity and independent decision-making. The Swiss people have traditionally shown limited interest in joining the EU. In the early 1990s, Switzerland did take a tentative step towards joining the European Economic Area. However, in a 1992 referendum, Swiss voters decisively rejected the proposal. In fact, in 2018, a survey found that only 3% even considered joining the EU a possibility. This reluctance stems not just from their commitment to neutrality, but also from their unique political and economic circumstances. Switzerland's system of direct democracy, where every major decision from trade agreements to environmental regulations is put to the public in binding referendums. This makes ceding any decision-making power to supranational entities problematic. Over the years, Switzerland has negotiated a series of bilateral agreements with the EU, granting them many of the benefits of the single market without perceived drawbacks of full membership. For many in Switzerland, these agreements represent the best of both worlds. They allow for economic collaboration while preserving Swiss autonomy. For example, the Swiss cherish their financial autonomy, especially given the country's central bank and regulatory framework are seen as cornerstones of its economic success. Thus, concerns about EU regulations potentially affecting the sector play a major role. But what happens now? What agreements do these countries have with the EU in the present day? None of these three countries are technically part of the EU, but they're closely tied in various ways. All three countries are part of the Schengen area, facilitating passport-free travel across borders. Both Iceland and Norway are members of the European Economic Area, which allows them to participate in the single market. This means they have to contribute to the EU budget, adopt certain EU laws without having direct representation in the European Parliament, and are exempt from some EU policies, notably in areas such as fishing. Unlike their Nordic counterparts, Switzerland prefers a tailored approach. Through a series of bilateral agreements, they access specific sectors of the single market, strategically choosing areas like pharmaceuticals and financial services. This ensures economic integration while safeguarding domestic autonomy in sectors like agriculture and monetary policy. So, which of these three countries is most likely to join the EU? For sure, Switzerland isn't keen on the idea at all. Public opinion on joining is incredibly low, and the country's dedication to neutrality is simply too fierce. It would take a string of massive geopolitical events to sway the Swiss people over to join the EU. Iceland is probably the most likely to join of the three as it's already part of the EEA, it has close ties to the EU, and a decisive referendum on joining has never been held. Still, we see no big reason for any of these countries to join at the moment. They all enjoy close relations with the EU, take part in many of its agreements, and contribute in their own way.